Welcome, everybody, to Aviva Alive. And Daniela and I are here to talk today about stress and how can it be done differently? Because it's one of those things that everybody in the world has some part of it in their lives, whether it's personal life or their business life, but it seems to be insidious in how it is creating less happiness. So, Daniela, how much fun can we have with this today?
Yes, I'm exciting because I like this subject. Stress is very important. 'Cause stress impacts the way you decide to react and live. And how can we do differently with the
Well,
stress?
my question that just popped into my head is how did stress become the deal? Like, at what point in our lives did we start making life so serious or off course that stress has become the thing that we require to mm, get rid of? Some people would say get rid of stress. Some people would say manage stress. But what is it that created this to begin with? Because people never used to speak about stress in the 1960s. That was not a conversation. So, what is your sense on what this thing stress is about?
Yeah, for me, sometimes change the way that I behave.
Hmm.
And in my case, for example, I know when I start to lose a little bit a small situation become to bother me more than normally would,
Uh-huh.
and my level of tolerance decrease a little bit. I try to understand how I behave or how my body start to behave with the stress, right? So a small situation because it becomes more, yeah, bother me sometimes. So this is a very clear sign for me. Yeah, it's about what's
Hmm.
happened. It's not what about happen outside, actually. It's about how I am inside. Yeah.
Hmm. And a lot of people these days aren't looking at inside. It's always what vitamin can I take? What breathing exercise can I do? What is the thing that's outside me I need to control so I don't react to it? What is the pill? What is a pill is the biggest one.
Yeah. I think when you offer, often your body already knows when before the mind understand. I think the tool, the secret, when uh, uh, you are conscious about your body,
Hmm.
actually. And you might notice maybe your heart start beating faster, your breathing become shorter, more tension in your body. So maybe you can pause as a choice.
Hmm.
For me, one of the things that makes more biggest difference is pausing.
Is which?
Pausing, make some pause,
Oh, pause.
relax, literally pause, stopping a few minutes, being in silence.
Well, and it's interesting because I had talking about, your heart tells you something. I had a conversation with a client yesterday, and she's been really like 8 years. She's been a client of mine, and uh, her what she finally realized, became aware of, was that her boss was disengaging with her and what I would call gaslighting, if anyone's familiar with gaslighting. And she couldn't understand why she kept on having these heart palpitations. Like her heart would race like crazy. And then she would end up at the hospital. And they would say, there's nothing wrong with your heart. And then, like, nothing wrong with her heart. Everything is cool. So we had this conversation yesterday. And I said, so was your body telling you, giving you the awareness that whatever was going on was creating an element of dis I'll call it dysregulation, but it does not to ignore if your heart is doing pounding things to ignore it and pretend it's just stress. But was your body telling you that it was not working? Like the environment that you, or the point of view that you had about your boss, or that your working environment was such that it was keeping you, I'll call it disheartened, or keeping you out of alignment from who you are. And was that really the message that was going on? And it was interesting because she went, "Oh, it wasn't my heart wasn't wrong at all." She had the awareness that her body was actually screaming at her to do something different. And it's interesting because over time, this very powerful woman became so disintegrated, so lost in her power that she sort of became as though she was nothing. When she was the one who was actually the powerhouse, smarter than the boss, was the one who gave all the ideas to the business and gave it life. And he was busy taking her ideas and making them hers and then making her like she was nothing. And she went along with the story, and her heart was going, hello, hello. And I don't usually tell stories, but I think that I thought I would share it because a lot of people get signals from their body way before the mind kicks in about something that's going on that's causing them to be, I'll call it disheartened, or, you know, feeling like they're not being themselves.
Yeah, yeah. And for me, at certain moment in my life, I choose to make a career transition.
Mhm.
I left more intense environment to be closer to my family because I have more presence, more quality life and time actually. And I was very conscious about my choice because I knew that stress was changing the way that I behave with my family and with me actually. So after that, I become more present, and it was very important for me. It's interesting because even this a new context, when stress show up, I start to take away exactly what that choice was mean to create. I takes any presence and I take away the quality of time and I take away connection. So I think it's about choice. It's about how you are living and you decide to make more light for you.
Yeah, and this thing about it's really great because when things show up that kind of take us off course, keep us from being present, it's kind of interesting because most people don't pay attention that they're not even present anymore. Do you ever notice that?
Yes, yes.
And I think about the idea of presence is so important because we make choices all day, every day, and say and do things that if we were present to them, we probably wouldn't say or do them because everything that we say, do, and create actually impacts our lives. Sometimes faster, sometimes faster than we can imagine. The other day I was making dinner and the espresso pot was on the stove next to where I was cooking. And in my head, I was going, okay, this is like when I cook, I have time to create. I was like, I would like to make impact everywhere I am in the world so people live differently, can live like happier lives. At that moment, I turned the frying pan and dumped over the espresso pot. I said, universe, that was not what I was intending about having impact. But it was funny because I was like, we do and say these things that are so funny unintentionally and not even realize where we are. And that's probably a really extreme version because I know my thing about time is like pretty instantaneous. Pretty instantaneous. But it's like being present to what it is that we are living. Like if stress didn't exist, let's try this question. If all the things that we're creating discordance equals stress,
Yeah.
how much more fun would people or you be having?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, it's a good tool. It's
Well,
a good
yeah.
question.
Well, it's kind of like we sit there and go, if people get used to the idea that a lower quality of life or just handling things is the way to do living, they kind of get used to it, like almost numb, as though that's the deal. And is it enough to live handling things?
Mm, beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah.
So how could so this um so today the focus is really to like how can we change or handle stress differently?
Yeah. I think it's one tool that I use a lot, which is asking questions.
Hmm.
One open questions, actually, questions that don't try to fix things, but create more space, for example. And what is happening with me right now? What is my body trying to show me? I think I'm always asking me. It's good for bring more awareness, consciousness. What else is possible that here that I haven't considered yet? So I think you change the mind, the fixed mind in the problem. You open more space for solution, for create more possibilities.
Yeah, and questions. What I know from it as a from an energetic perspective, because it's always, asking. We can come to a conclusion. We go, this is the way life is. I just better put up with the things that I've created in life, and hopefully I'll get to the end of life at some point. Or we could look at the things that we have in our lives and ask a question. And from an energetic, scientific perspective, is that when you ask a question that's open-ended, like question could be like, what would it take to change this? That's an easiest question. And it starts to change the field of information of not only for you, but for everything that is in your world. How is that possible? Because it is. Because the universe is inside you, which means you can influence everything in your world. That sounds a little bit woo-woo to a lot of people, but there is so much evidence to show that I've seen it show up in my own research where somebody who was coming for to have a brain scan, their field changed. All the people in this research, their field changed before they even had what I was researching at the time was access bars. All of them showed up with this particular thing because we influence the fields around us. People don't recognize we actually have that capacity to actually bring more to people's worlds. If we, have you ever been in an environment where one, like say in your house, one
Yes,
person walks in the door and they're angry like crazy, intense, stressed, angry, oh, and everybody starts to follow suit. All the
exactly.
peacefulness in the house kind of disappears, and everyone becomes part of that same thing. Somehow, everyone starts to become in the same soup pot, we'll call it. And yet, if they came into the house happy and like, hey, what is it we're going to like with that sort of sense of like joyousness, it would similarly change it. So when I looked at this research, what I found was people's brains changed by the presence of the person who was doing the changing, measuring their brains. Not that we need science to know it, but we have the capacities to influence things. So when you think about stress or an environment like going home and you things are not quite peaceful and lovely, you could start asking the question, what would it take to change this? You don't have to say
Mm-hmm.
it out loud.
Exactly. Yeah.
You can say it internally and start to get an awareness of who or what requires attention. Like, what is it that is that? Oh, like somebody hasn't eaten enough, their blood sugar is low, or they had a stressful day and really what they want is a hug. Like simple, simple, Simon. But if you ask the question, you start to go, oh, you get the awareness.
Yes. Yes. And you start to ask, when you start to asking questions, I think your body begins to relax too, and the
Yes.
mind slow down, and you move out of automatic reaction mode for another possibility, right?
Yes, because it sort of turns on creative energies. When you ask a question, like we'll just use my example of like, what would it take to change this with no idea of coming to a conclusion, it actually starts to change how the brain is functioning so that it actually stops being reactive and it starts to turn on creative energies. And oftentimes from a place of possibilities, not the, I better react to the scenario that's here rather than start to bring in like the creative part. Because when you ask a question like, what would it take to change that? It's a creative energy. And has anyone ever tried that? Has
Yes,
ever you ever tried? What would it take to change this?
exactly. Yeah. When you're in more present, you can feel more ways to change you and to change the situation too. Uh,
Of course. Of
yeah.
course. And in your experience, I mean, certainly it is in mine, but in your experience, do you find that asking a question brings you more awareness?
Yes, sure. Always, always. Actually, I am questioned all the time. I am the possibility for open questions all the time because for me, it's start a new creation. It's an
Hmm.
interesting point because when you open for this kind of possibility, you always bring the situation for you increase new possibilities, your mind, your relationships with with your family and your friends. So, and it becomes an example too, because people don't know how to relax and change their reaction mode, right?
Hmm. Yeah, because they live not being present and mostly on automatic pilot and being reactive, which is like stress makes people more reactive. There's no question about it. But when we use a question, like what would it take to change this, it changes not only how your perception of it, but everyone else's perception of it. It can be very subtle, but all of a sudden
Yeah.
somebody will say, let's stop watching TV and I'll go outside for a walk, out of nowhere.
Yes. Yes.
And people think, oh, that things are different now. Okay, great.
Wow. Wow. It's a contribution.
Well,
Yeah.
and we discount our capacities to influence and change things
Yeah.
because I don't know, how is it that we didn't get like this information when we were kids, Ask a question. What is it when you were a kid? You ask a question and then what happens? You're dumb for asking a question?
Mhm.
Or we get told it was a silly question? Or be quiet, you're asking too many questions? And what if that's not true? What if it was just a way of
Yeah,
quietening you as a person so that you weren't the curious
perfect.
creator that you are? Like, I
Yeah.
think I was looking at the concept of kids going, why is the sky blue? Almost every parent has probably been asked, why is the sky blue? And they don't meaningfully want to close down the person who's asking the question. But oftentimes in a time when they're so busy that they don't have time to answer it, and then they don't entertain it any further, and then we stop asking questions. And
Yes.
what if questions were the greatest way to change the things that are going on in our lives that create stress?
Yeah. Beautiful.
Because to me, stress is the discordance. It's a discordance to who we really are, who we really are as a being, and the environment that we live in, have created, whatever that is, or our point of view about a scenario. It's just discordance. Because without the discordance, if we had no point of view about anything,
Mm.
what would our lives be like? Or if we could be an allowance for the people around us for how they are being, that creates another open door, another way to change stress. So the concept of allowance is really unusual for most people as a concept.
Mhm.
Um, and I kind of like it, but it takes presence to presence to jump into it. So, do you have any cool examples, Daniela, of what allowance is and how you can use it?
Yes, as I feel sometimes that I'm stressed with the job, with something, and I start to feel uncomfortable with my no patience or no concentration or no consciousness. I I stop. I go to my room. I go be present. I breathe. I ask questions. I can feel that if I have some tools in that moment, could change everything.
Hmm.
So it's important to and make some important decision, handling conflicts, responding to delicate situation, when you're aware that you are not, in the good moment for choice, I think it's a good possibility, a good time to stop and think differently.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And so that would be like having allowance for you.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Like this isn't working. And rather than what most people do is start judging themselves about how it's not working, that they're not controlling it, they've done it wrong. They're a bad parent, they're a bad wife, they're a blah, blah, blah. They should get it together. All of those things are what if we had more allowance for ourselves about that? Because they're all judgments. And the judgments themselves create stress.
Yes. Yes.
Like all of the I'm bad, wrong, I've done it wrong, I should be doing it better are all judgments. Nobody looks at like how it is that they're treating themselves.
Yeah.
And I like your idea of like how you handle that by going and creating space for yourself so you can become more present.
Yes.
Hmm.
And I see that my kids is paying attention me all the time to realize how to deal with that, how to react to with that. So they are learning to how to do it. So people that is around me, it's learning to. It's I know that actually the idea is to be a contribution to other people to change this idea that stress questions is not possible. So to deal with the stress.
Hmm. Yeah, to do whatever it is. Well, I think presence, eh, which is awareness, is actually like a superpower.
Yeah,
And it is because it gives you the opportunity to calibrate how it is that you're experiencing life and how to change scenarios that are maybe not working for you, which are creating the stress. So, it's kind of like, and then I'm sure people are going, how do I become more present? How do I have more superpowers? How many people are looking for superpowers to be more aware and more present so that you could live in a way that really works for you? Is anyone doing a yes, a no? Ah, okay, lots of yeses. Well, first of all, I think to your point, Daniela, well, why don't you share what you use to create that, to have more presence?
how can I do that?
Yeah. Like if we were to go, this is the thing I love to use to create more presence, other than going and lying down and stepping back and pausing. What else is there?
To to create more space, more awareness. Yes, I use a technique. I do access bars actually. Yeah, this is very important for me. And the sessions, it's open a lot of space and consciousness and more mental clarity. And to be more quiet, silence, breathing, and feel my body and leave my body, uh, be more equilibrated. I think it's the good point.
Congruent. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I use access bars as well. As many times as I can, particularly if I'm working on a big project, like a big research project. But it is one of the things that allows us to certainly have a lot more presence because it seems to declutter all the things that we use to offset ourselves. And to me, that's a great gift.
Yes. Yeah.
Because if you don't have your mind talking to you all the time about how you're bad or wrong, or that you should be doing things, or reflecting on the whole day that passed that you can't really necessarily change, and judging what it is that occurred and how it is you handled it. If your mind was calm, you could actually move forward with not only more presence, but you would have more time being happy.
Actually. Yeah. Yeah. Bring more presence. You don't need to live in the way that you're expecting something bad happen or expectation or imagination, negative imagination. So open for my optimism. And, my mind it changed completely when I do these two access
Cool.
bars.
Cool. So, what's the question that we can leave people with today on
Yeah.
how can we change stress? What is one or maybe more than one question and we can leave people with to to use?
Yeah. I thought in a question, how can I become more of aware of it sooner and choose something different from there? Yeah, I think we can start with that, but
Cool.
we have different questions in, you know, at the days that you could um, practice and or create your question too. I think when you start to create a question, it came with your energy.
That's true. My question um, that I like to use is what can I add to my life that will allow me to have more joy and peace? Because those are the things I really value. And it's more about adding something than trying to get rid of. And people never look at oh, I'm already so stressed. How can I add something? Try it. See what shows up. So thank you everybody for joining us today. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Please feel free to share our podcast with everybody you know and invite people to have more peace, joy, less stress, and more consciousness in their life. Thanks.